You can learn a lot about the law of correspondence, as above, so below, by comprehending the cycles of nature. The Analemma is the sinusoidal pulse of all the luminaries. The ecliptic of the zodiacal belt of the heavens is the sine wave. The Analemma is a sine wave, and there are 12 segments of this sinusoidal wave. And these 12 divisions are the 12 apostolic disciples, or the 12 helpers of Jesus, which are the 12 zodiac signs. So we have the earth, and you have the equator, and then you have the tropics of Cancer and tropic of Capricorn, which represents the sun's path, because the sun moves, not the earth. This gives us spring, summer, autumn, and winter. And that's the sun waxing and waning. Yes, the sun also waxes and wanes, like the moon. The sun waxing and waning is the battle between Jesus and Satan. And that's the sun and his missionary journey. The moon does also something similar. New moon waxing, full moon waning, along with all of the other luminaries, follow the path of the zodiac. We have the human body is also part of this cycle, as well as the 12 systems of the body. The human brain and the 12 nerve systems is part of this cycle. In fact, we have Aries at the crown of the head. It corresponds with the cerebrum or the cerebram, the ram or the lamb, which is the higher mind. And then you have Taurus at the bottom of the head by the neck, and it corresponds with the cerebellum or the cerebellum, the bull of the lower brain. And then after Taurus, you have Gemini, the two arms. Cancer is next, the breast. Leo is next, the heart. Below is Virgo, the belly. Below that is Libra, the two kidneys, the scales of balance. Below that, you have Scorpio, the generative area. Below that is Sagittarius, the hips, because hips comes from hippo, the horse. You have Sagittarius. Below that, you have Capricorn, the knees, the kneecaps, Capricorn. Below that, you have Aquarius. And then the final part of the temple is the Pisces, the two fish. So we see the sun and the moon. We see the human, the annual and the daily cycle, and also the Kali Yuga, which I'm not going to get into, which is this sinusoidal wave, the sine wave. The sine wave goes through everything in the universe. It's the fingerprint of God, the Fibonacci, phi numeral, golden ratio. And what better wisdom that there is to have than to know this, to know nature and how it works and how we relate to nature. Because Satan, who is the planet Saturn at the top of the cosmic order of the luminaries, which corresponds to Father Time, is always in battle with the sun, Jesus, on the ecliptic. As they move through their journeys, they're always opposing each other and confronting and conjuncting each other. Astrologically, therefore, units of time which describe this spiral, which is also the serpent, which is sin, which is the sin wave of all. It's all the same thing because it's the sin that we are in. The ancient cultures refer to it as the Ouroboros, which is an ancient symbol of a serpent or a dragon consuming its own tail, derived from the Greek meaning tail eater. It represents eternity, cyclical renewal, and the endless process of birth, death, and renewal. Across alchemical, hermetic, and mystical traditions, it symbolizes the unity of creation and destruction as one perpetual cosmic cycle. And if you break down the word God, G-O-D, it's generation, operation, and dissolution. So the sin wave or the sine wave represents time along with the seven wanderers, which would be just the seven planets that they could see at that time. The seven luminaries, the seven fellows, the seven jackals or the seven crowns, the seven heavens, the seven angels, the seven dwarfs, the seven churches, the seven lamps, the 7 candlesticks or the 7 scrolls, corresponding with the 7 chakras or the 7 resistors or the 7 energy centers of the body, along with the 7 density layers and the 7 levels of consciousness. 7 represents time and 12 represents space. As they cycle or as they circle or circulate, they always make these sin waves, these sine waves, these sinusoidal waves. So this represents the flow of time, and that's what sin is. Sin is a spiral sinusoidal cycle of everything. As this celestial sin wave cycles as a pulse of cosmic energy, the spirals of the luminaries, their energies create tones or attributes that can actually manifest in our physical bodies. It's why they are correlated to the 7 chakras. And that's the spirit of that the Bible is talking about, the spirit behind the spiral. Jordan Maxwell and Bill Donahue were 100% correct. If you look up the moon in the Biblical Encyclopedia, under the word moon, you find sin AI, sin, Sinai.
The moon is a symbol of the emotions. Okay, the moon is the emotions. See, the sun is a symbol of the mind. And so what happens? If your ego gets between you and the sun or the Christ, then there is no light cast on the moon and your emotions go nuts. You know, you're living in your emotions. If, on the other hand, you get into meditation and you subject yourself to meditation, then the moon is receiving light from the sun and there is light in the darkness of your life. Okay, that's why the moon, symbolically in mysticism, represents the emotions. Now, if you go and you get yourself a book like a dictionary of mythology and look it up, you'll see that the goddess of the moon is a goddess named Sin. That's the name of the moon goddess. And what it always meant is that you are dwelling in sin when you are dwelling in your emotions instead of dwelling in the renewed mind. That's all. It has nothing to do with having a good time. It has nothing to do with going to Atlantic City. It has nothing to do with drinking, smoking, sex, gambling, anything like that. It has to do with dwelling in your emotions instead of dwelling in the renewed mind. All of your religious cutthroats have made this thing into sin is doing what everybody likes to do. Okay? You can't have a party. You can't go anywhere. You can't go down to Atlantic City to see a show. They've declared it sin. It is not. Sin is the moon goddess, and sin means dwelling in the emotions instead of dwelling in the higher mind. Don't you ever wonder where the word came from? Why nobody ever told you? Didn't anybody ever tell you where the word sin, where it came from? It's the goddess of the moon. And that means the controller of the emotions.
And in the ancient Arabic system, the moon god was called Sin, S-I-N. That was his name. The moon god of Arabia was Sin. The moon god in Arabia was called Sin. And so this is why today the Jews go to synagogue, because the synagogue is the house of worship of the god Sin, the moon god. And so we know that the Jews today have a lunar calendar based on the moon. Oh. Yeah, but I've been... And a mountain in the ancient language was spelled Ai. So you take the mountain Ai with the god who lived in the mountain, the moon god Sin, and put it together, it becomes Sinai. So you get Moses goes up into Sinai. No, it's Sin Ai, the mountain of the moon god. And this is why Jews have their celebration after sundown, because that's when the moon comes out. They don't have the celebration during the day because that's when the sun's out. So that's the time for Christians to celebrate God's sun. The Jews are worshiping the moon god, Sin.
And as Santos Bonacci explains, shout out to Santos Bonacci, Santos explains this in relation to the serpent. The cycling spirals are always serpentary or septenary. They are sevenary, cycles of 7. 7 is the number of nature. But we have just now come to learn through history evolving that there are other luminaries in this cosmic mystery. And when you can learn and really, really start to become aware of the luminary time cycles, the layers of time that we all operate on are dictated by the cosmic screenshot of our birth chart, and it can be applied if we learn it to our own benefit. So let's go ahead and see what Thomas H. Burgoyne said about each of the luminaries in The Light of Egypt, The Science of the Soul and Stars. Your lunar clock is monthly, every 28 days. The lunar cycle is symbolically similar to the sun, kind of, but she's polar opposite because the sun is electric and the moon is magnetic, man and woman. The moon has dual character, cycling back and forth very quickly. She is the queen of the heavens in the Bible, according to the Biblical Encyclopedia. It says in there also. Your shadow work cycles through your emotions for 28 days. All of our experiences and our emotional intentions, we cycle through them, through all themes of our life. You are spiritually feeling all themes of your life in 28 days, in 28 days again. Your solar clock is obviously every 365 days annually, and the sun represents your central spiritual potential or your creative power, your central life principle of all physical things. The influx of the sun determines the absolute measure of your physical vitality. The sun governs the higher group of your selfish sentiment and your lower group of moral qualities. Your mental intellectualness, your self-esteem is on a yearly cycle. Your Mercury cycle is every 88 days. Mercury, the messenger of the gods, is your mercurial mind running on an 88-day clock. It stays relatively close to the sun, but Mercury signifies your perception and your power of insight, the ability to see, perceive, and reason. And depending on where Mercury is placed at and dignified, could determine whether things are going to be good or bad in your life. Your Venus cycle is every 225 days. Venus is almost a yearly clock. It's just under a year. It goes back and forth. Don't forget these luminaries retrograde, going back and forth. But Venus signifies the love element of the soul. It represents the sense of feeling with embodied humanity, expressing the clinging, yielding, the feminine portion of the entire human condition. Your bondships, your relationships is on a 2-year clock. Your Mars clock is just under 2 years. Mars is the god of war, the greatest warrior as Vulcan, the celestial blacksmith. Mars is your action, your drives, your desires. Mars signifies elementiveness, which is your warrior aspect, to seek out, to take, to drive, to win battles. That's on a 2-year clock. So just about every 720 days, give or take. Your Jupiter clock is every 12 years. Jupiter or Thor, Jupitor or Ptah in the Bible, Jupiter, Jupiter. Your Jupiter cycle is your growth, your spirituality, your principles of philosophy, and your life philosophy, your arbitration, the working towards adjustment of equilibrium in life by the withdrawal of disturbing forces, which makes sense if you think about it, because things like that happen over long periods of time, like 12 years. Growing to be a truly good person who is charitable in human life, to have noble action, that's on a 12-year clock. Your Saturn clock is every 28 to 30 years, give or take. Saturn signifies silent meditation. Therefore, it corresponds to auricular attributes. These higher cycles are more related to having years of experiencing these things that take more time to naturally manifest in you as a spirited soul going through this journey. Therefore, Saturn represents the senses and powers of hearing and listening, disciplining yourself, because meditation is the listening of the mind and listening to the inspirations of the soul, not our personal self, but the higher self, the overminded oversoul, or the collective consciousness that everybody is connected to metaphysically. Saturn corresponds with theological mysteries and the medieval concept that this luminary is an isolated hermit. Saturn is your meditational mastery in life, to master things. That's on a 28 to 30-year clock. Yet again, don't forget what we already said about the connection of Saturn to Satan. So almost every aspect and position of the planet Saturn is rather more of a misfortune than a blessing in nature, because it's cold and selfish, and it's very prone to create miserly disposition. Your Uranus clock is on an 84-year cycle. Uranus is the mythological parent of Saturn and rules the ideal sentiments and the imagination to a very great extent. Uranus is almost like the lifetime clock, because that's 84-year clock, because the ones who are dominated by Uranus's flux possess the extraordinary ability in special directions that happen over lifetimes. These are the people who learn to become an exceptional genius, whose talents are so strange and erratic that they seldom, if they even ever become appreciated, that they are inventive, original, acute observers, possessing large, perceptive, and executive powers, much giving to roaming over the face of the earth. In other words, they are bohemians. Your Neptune clock is every 168 years. I know some of you may think like, bro, most people don't even live to stay healthy long enough to make it past 100 years. But there are organic homeopathic ways to push this boundary. So there is this 1914 book called Vitalogy that has gone into detail explaining how to live past 150 years or so, give or take, supposedly by drinking distilled water. Now, I know it's probably easier said than done and probably way more challenging than it seems, but considering the way society is now, you have to consider everything health-wise, like properly filtering out impurities, the particulates, deposits of animal soil, etc., insoluble minerals and materials. But if you look on the internet, there are some people who have made it possible. But moving forward, now if you've ever read into planetary harmony or the law of octaves or the music of the spheres or the cosmic monochord, then you learn that the farther, more distant luminaries harmonically mirror the lower ones in different ways. This is the more complex, advanced understanding of the aspects of the luminaries or the planets. For example, Uranus is an elevated correspondence of Mercury on the more interior plane, and likewise, similarly, the nature of Uranus's influence upon the more lower physical plane is equivalent of both Mars and Saturn combined. Neptune holds a refined octave of Venus, and Pluto has an intensified octave of Mars. But we all know, once again, planets are not physical spheres. They are all attenuated, plasmatic, transcendental material. They are metaphysical cosmic lights called luminaries. So Neptune expresses all of the higher qualities that are presently known to us. Neptune is the octave expression of the planet Venus, once again. Consequently, Neptune's influx relates to the affectional and emotional qualities that are similar to Venus, but on a different manifestation or expression or octave. Neptune is like a social clock, a societal clock. It's 168 years. I would say that it very much deals with spiritual unity as an entire species over many generations. It's a generational clock. Neptune controls the Platonic spirit of universal brotherhood. With the aspects of Neptune in connection with the sun and the moon, if they're powerful, they tend greatly towards the production of clairvoyance, which is telekinetic, psychic, and perceiving things or seeing events in the future beyond normal human sensory ability. And then Pluto is your 248-year clock. Imagine that. Like, wow. So Pluto is like a societal clock, every 248 years, spending 11 to 31 years in each zodiac sign. Thomas Burgoyne, in the book The Light of Egypt, he doesn't even have Pluto listed at the end. He just talks about the so-called lost orb that is allegorically expressed by Moses and Abel and the prophets of Scandinavia as Ragnarok. Pluto represents way more extra vast collective transformations that unfold across millennia rather than decades or centuries, longer spans of time. Regime or empire related over society level associated with cataclysmic transition, esoteric judgment, and the ending of world ages. Pluto, therefore, becomes an emblematic symbol of the terminal phases of a cosmic cycle before birth emerges from collapse. Pluto, as the more distant and slower moving of the visible luminaries, it is correlated with the abyssal and the transformative dimensions surrounding Thoth, or the hidden gateways between manifested worlds. So the outermost bodies, Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto, they are often excluded from the traditional layouts, but not because they lack significance, but because their meanings operate on a more archetypal and field-based level rather than purely on observational astrology. Uranus is not just a distant planetary body, but a representation of the firmament itself, the enclosing celestial field. Neptune corresponds to the waters above, the vast crystalline expanse, the luminous medium through which light and vibration propagate. And then Pluto aligns with the concept of the primum mobile, the outermost driving principle, which is the unseen initiator of motion within the cosmic order. But to the ancient world, these were not merely distant astronomical objects suspended in empty space, but they are living intelligences, governing archetypal forces that are embedded within the fabric of reality. Mythology, astronomy, astrology, metallurgy, theology, and sacred ritual were all woven together into one unified cosmic language. Humanity still unconsciously speaks this ancient celestial code every single week, repeating names and symbols that are inherited from civilizations that encoded their understanding of the heavens directly into the structure of time itself. The 7-day week preserves an ancient celestial architecture hidden directly within human language itself, because they could only see the 7 planets at that time. You've got Domingo for the sun, or sol, Lunes for the moon, for Luna, Martes for Mars, Miércoles for Mercury, Jueves for Jupiter, Viernes for Venus, and Sábado for Saturn, the 7th day, the Sabbath day. And it can be depicted by drawing a simple 7-pointed star. The Earth and human consciousness as reflections of one interconnected cosmic order where celestial cycles, metals, mythology, language, and sacred time all mirrored one unified cosmological framework. And I'm going to show the chart of all the different layouts of the different languages that you see the similarities between the days of the week, the luminaries, the metallurgy, that they all corresponded to. So within the geocentric model, the 7 classical luminaries were understood as wandering celestial intelligences revolving in relation to the Earth, each governing their own particular quality, their cycles, and their influences within the terrestrial realm that we live. As different civilizations inherited this cosmological framework, the planetary days remained structurally intact, yet the names evolved over time according to regional mythology and linguistic traditions. The Romans preserved the planetary gods directly through Latin terminology, while the Germanic and the Nordic cultures translated these celestial archetypes into their own divine equivalents, transforming Mars into Tyre, Mercury into Woden, Jupiter into Thor, and Venus into Frigga or Freya, thereby embedding their mythology worldview into the very structure of the weekly calendar. Taken together, this sequence mirrors a progression of fields. It is a layered unfolding, much like the octave itself on the monochord, where each stage represents a shift in frequency, density, and expression. And in this way, mythology, astrology, and harmonic theory converge into one single, coherent, unified language, a sinusoidal narrative of descent into form and the ascent back up towards origin, where each level is both a continuation and a transformation of where we came. The sin, the sine wave, the sinusoidal wave. So if anybody is interested in getting the Temple of Woden or the Creed of Iron, which goes into the Nordic Germanic version of the days of the week, goes into explicit detail on this topic, I do offer these books along with other astrological titles. Just message me or put the word sin in the comments and I'll send you a message. Until next time, I hope to see you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and comment. Cosmic Familia.